everybody. It is 7 p.m. and I've got my wife with me this week. So I hope you guys are doing well, and the highs and lows of raising children, which is definitely a part of life. So I want to pray and start. And so it looks like we may have everybody that was on last week already, but I'll wait a tiny bit and then we will start. So, all right. I wish I could see your guys' faces, but I can't. So it is what it is. So, but I hope you're all doing well and enjoying as much as you can being quarantined. And I guess we're not really quarantined anymore, but a lot of people are staying quarantined. So I hope you're doing well, and we are still quarantined. So, yeah. So let me pray for us, and because I don't want to take too much time just waiting, because we are going to bring two of our children on today towards the end, Shiloh and Sheridan, who fit into this next age group that we're going to talk about, this first age group, this first stage that we're going to talk about tonight. So let's pray and let's get started. Lord, we love you. We thank you for just this time to gather, to talk, to share, to learn. And I pray that you would just give all of us an extra measure of grace as we do our best to raise our children. Give us an extra grace of humility, because none of us have arrived and have all the answers. And we just want to follow you and obey you, Lord. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So let me start with this question. And the question is, there we go. What makes parenting so difficult? What is it about parenting that makes it so difficult? So we can open up the chat and we can talk there. So I'm not sure where I think I would have to stop sharing to see that. So I'm going to pause sharing so that I can see that. Nope, there's the chat. Okay, so if you want to type in the chat, what makes parenting so difficult? And I'll start with saying, each child has a different personality. And so that makes things extremely hard to navigate, because what works for one may not work for the other one, just for the sole purpose that they have, or the reason that they have different personalities. So anybody else just put it in the chat, because I can't see the Q&A right now, but I can see the chat. So, or maybe I can't see the chat while let me unshare, and then possibly
There we
I'll
go.
be able to. There we go. It says chat is disabled. Let me tell Miss Holly.
Maybe that. Can I push this?
Okay. Okay, let me see if I can all right. Okay. We'll get Holly to do something there. Is it still disabled? Okay, we're good. All right, so got it. It's working. So type your answers as far as what you see and what you would say, what makes parenting so difficult. Let me see if I can go back to sharing my screen for our question. There we go. Yeah, I can do things sometimes. All right, so type for me what makes parenting different. I said different personalities. Jacqueline, what would you say is one of the things? We are raising people, Chris Duncan says, like a whole person. Yes, it is a whole person. Yes. Many me's for some of us, yes.
I would say the challenge is the balance between being parent and friend. Trying to cultivate an environment that's safe for your kids, yet still showing them that you're an authority.
Oh,
over
that's
them.
good. That's good.
Um,
That's very good. Katie and Ernesto said that it's a lifetime commitment. So you don't get to just do it for a little bit and then you're done. You know, even when none of us have adult children, but when we have adult children, you are still a parent. It's lifetime. So just maybe two more on what is it that makes parenting so difficult. Personalities, multiple kids. Ooh, boy. Chan said multiple kids. Yes. And traveling spouse, constant traveling spouse. So yeah, when
that's gotta be hard.
you are doing it by yourself a lot, even though you're not by yourself because you're married, it's difficult. And then for those who are single parents like Chris, it is difficult as well. And so yes, those are good. And multiple children, yes. You know, I've often heard people say, yeah, when you have one kid, not a big deal. Two, not a big deal. When you have three or more, then it starts to become more of a, the whole zone defense type thing. And it's a lot more difficult. So yeah, that's good. All right. So here is something for us to think about here. So we have an enemy, number one, and things are constantly changing. I mean, bottom line is Satan is going to be busy after us, and things change. Nothing with parenting stays the same. I mean, the landscape of parenting changes, the world changes, things are constantly on the move. Mike and Grace said, kids are always watching what you do.
Mhm.
Yes, and we'll talk a little bit about that tonight when Shiloh and Sheridan come on. But I wanted you guys to watch a clip of something, and hopefully I can get you to see it pretty well here. So let's try. Yeah, problematic there for sure. Let's talk a little bit before we go into our 3 stages and talk about specifically tonight the commanding stage. Let's have some dialogue about the video. So what what thoughts? It's funny, but it's not funny. What thoughts went through your mind as you were watching that and just contemplating how the children were acting, how the mom was dealing with it? What went through your mind? So just type away for me. The dad was over it and was not present. That is the thing that grabbed me the most when I first saw that, is literally how engaged and how much the mom was trying to figure this out. But the dad was, he was very passive too. And even how he spoke about what was going on, completely like, this is your issue. You deal with it. I'm not having it. And so that was very shocking to me. Chan said there's a lot of anger from the kids and from mom. And so, yeah, sometimes children just learn that from their parents. They see it modeled, so they do. And sometimes some children are just, their temperament is one that's a lot more easily agitated and anger filled. And so, yeah, there's a lot of anger there. Somebody else, what did you see? What did you sense? What really grabbed you as you were watching the video? Something, I know something grabbed you. Something said something to you. So, all right, here we go. Paul and Shar said, I just kept thinking, how do I not have my kids end up like that? Everyone was yelling. The kids had no respect for the mom's orders. That is a great question, and we will talk about some of that tonight, Shar. And I can assure you, I can't assure you like with extreme confidence, but your kids will not end up like that. And Morgan and Kara said the same thing, that yes to that. How do you assure that your kids don't end up like that? The girls ran the house. I think that's one of the things that dangerous for parents. There's something called child-centered home, where everything revolves around the children and revolves around what they want, their activities. Even some people have what they call I think it's called a shared bed, where the children can at any time they want to come and sleep with the parents. Now there are times when it's very good for your child to know that the co-sleeping. Thank you. Yes, that they can come to mommy and daddy for comfort, but that can't. Well, I guess it could be the norm, but I think it could potentially be dangerous for it to be the norm. So as parents, we have to decide and figure out how are we going to go about parenting at these different stages. What is it that we're going to do and not do? Paul said, I was worried for the kids' safety because they were running out in the street. That is why, and we'll talk about why in this commanding stage, it is so important for the parents to lead, to command what the children do and when they do it, immediate obedience, because they don't have the capacity to think beyond the situation. And so one of the things with the commanding stage that we talked about in the 3 stages, the commanding parenting stage, birth to 12. Now you may think, what in the world? That is a large time frame. And it is. And we will talk about why we need to look at it like that. But also, when we said that things change, there are 4 sub-stages, if you will, or stop points within the commanding stage. Now, the commanding parenting stage is the voice of a military officer. So we come to you and direct what you do. So we don't wait for the child to come to us. We literally have to go to them and then direct what they do, give instruction, give order, give whatever is needed. So that's the focus for this stage, the voice of a military officer. We come to you and direct what you do. Now, here's what the word of God says in Proverbs 1:8 and 9. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and don't reject your mother's teaching, for they will be a garland of favor on your head and pendants around your neck. So the focus is that when we as parents parent our children properly and they obey us, that we're all blessed for it. And so that's what's going on here in Proverbs. But we have to understand that as our children go through these steps, right, in the commanding stage, we have to look at what's going on in the child's brain at this time. Because as we talked about last week, there's some cognitive things taking place, right? So let me get us to this slide on the human brain development. Now, if you look at this, look at what's taking place. So even before birth, in utero, all the way to about, look at age 11, 12. There's a lot that's taking place in the commanding stage. You have sensory pathways, vision, hearing, language acquisition and integration, higher cognitive function. So all of that is taking place from birth to 11 years old, or 12, you can say as well. So when you think about that, and you think, when you said, Paul, the child's safety, literally, I'm sorry, well, no, all the way here, babe. Yeah, literally, you're thinking about a child who may run out in the street and get hit. And so that's why it's important that they obey right away. When they're at a young age, they're learning from you. And as a parent, we teach them, we taught this. Delayed obedience is disobedience, because there are moments when you cannot delay. If you delay in listening, you're going to get injured. And you've heard the analogy of placing your hand on a hot stove. If you don't obey right away, you're a crispy critter. You're burned. So the importance for a child to learn, okay, as soon as mommy and daddy say, it's stop, I have to stop. So Loretta says, I don't see how this can be avoided without physical discipline at early age. These kids have realized that the consequences just aren't that big a deal, and they've gone off with the wind with it. Yes. And so what we were talking about last week, for those of you who weren't here, is corporal punishment. We are advocates of that. We believe the Bible, when the Bible says, if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. Some people believe that the rod is not a physical tool, but it's like a metaphor. We don't believe that. And so what we have done, just to recap that, is whatever age they are, we spank them accordingly. So if they're 1, then they get 1 swat, if you will. And we have done on the bottom, and not in anger. Not always, because let me not share like we're perfect. We try to pull them aside and to a restroom or to a bedroom and say, do you know what you did? Yes, I know what I did. What did you do? I didn't listen, or I delayed obedience. So disobedience and disrespect for us are the 2 things that would warrant a spanking. And so then, okay, so then daddy's going to give you a spanking because of this, and then turn them around. And, if they're 5, they get 5 extremely hot lashes. Now we thought we gave it away. We haven't used it in a while, because our kids are 15, 14, 12, and 9, soon to be 9. So this is our rod of correction, and it's just a kind of leather feeling strap. It bends, and so it delivers what it needs to deliver. And don't think, man, they're enjoying this. We don't enjoy it. We didn't enjoy it, but we knew the consequences of not doing this. And like Loretta said, the consequences for the kid aren't a big deal, so they continue the behavior. But when you spank, you're trying to shield them from future consequences that they are going to have to face if they don't correct their behavior. So Loretta said also, in the UK, hitting a child can lead to child care services being called. I think that plays a part. The families that physically discipline with hands or more is illegal, do it anyway at the risk of whatever. And so that's one thing we did not do. We never, we didn't spank with our hands, or we used this. I think once or twice this or something like this wasn't available. So I would get like a plastic spatula, or sometimes I would use a belt. And you may say, man, that sounds so brutal. But what we did is we always asked them, do they know why they're getting a spanking? Yes. And then through the tears, then we say, okay, because of this, you are going to get a spanking. Daddy's going to give you 5. You know that you're 5 years old. And after they would cry, we would pray with them. And then when we left the room, it was literally like, it's thrown into the sea of forgetfulness. You got your punishment. We're out. We're good. Let's go. Now, another thing, too, that we said last week is we did not allow our children to cry uncontrollably, because that's a way that they are controlling the situation. They know if they throw a tantrum, you may not want to give them a spanking. And at times it worked. It didn't work with me, but Jacqueline struggled with this. They're losing control. I can't do this. I'm crying. And so she would say, I can't do this. And I said, no, you need to do it, because what's happening right now is they're winning. And they are showing you they're in control, and we have to regain control. And it's not easy. It's difficult. It's not easy. So we're going to move on. And here is what is taking place in this stage, okay? And then we're going to put some years and specific time parameters on it. But we're talking physical development. So they are growing. Like last week when we talked about that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, they are growing in stature. So a lot of physical development from birth until about 11 or 12 years old. Social and emotional development. There is a point where all of a sudden you almost can see that a switch has been flipped, and they're starting to process things from an emotional standpoint. They no longer, and for those of you who your children may call you mommy and daddy, all of a sudden there's a point where you become mom and dad. And it's sad. It's very sad. No longer mommy and daddy. And it's because they're socially aware that I'm not a little kid anymore. Little kids call their parents mommy and daddy. And so that gets stopped, and it stinks. Because that little cuddly, cute boy or girl is coming into themselves. They're developing to where it's no longer mommy and daddy. And I don't like it, but it is what it is. So, Jacqueline, what do you have to say about those two so far, about the physical development and social and emotional development?
I mean, I don't think I need to add anything to what you're saying. I mean, it's true. Just exactly what you're saying is true. What I've experienced.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can address the intellectual development, because as you guys know, we do homeschool. So we get to see in and get a very good picture of our children's intellectual development, because most of their school, not all of it, they're at a 2-day homeschool academy. One day is academic. The other day is the arts day, drama, dance, music, all of that. But maybe you can talk about the intellectual development and what you have been able to see as our kids go through this, and specifically in that first stage.
I mean, they're all completely different. Yeah, they're all completely different. And what worked, 1 year with one child doesn't work with the next child the next year. And I mean, I think it's just a reminder of how God has made us so unique, and uniquely different. And I think even through our children, we learn to appreciate that, and to appreciate differences. And we can appreciate differences of people outside of our home, people that we don't have to love, people we don't have to like. But then within our family, we'll have different personalities that we are almost forced or encouraged to love and to work out. And I think God
Yeah,
helps us in that area.
absolutely.
Shows us our weaknesses. And
Sure. Let me go back a little bit. Morgan and Cara said, how did you stop them from crying uncontrollably? I have a thing that I used to say a lot, and I think I hear a lot of people say that, boy, I wish they would, curse me or do this. And if they ever do, I wish my child would do that. They would, feel whatever. And I remember my mom hearing me say that once, and she said, son, don't say things like that, because you really don't want them to do that. Because if they do, then you're going to have to deal with it. And I said, yeah, you know what, Mom, you're right. And I was a grown man with kids at this point. But for us, I think that the impetus for not allowing them to do this is when a child does that, they are commanding that they control the situation. And you may say, do they really get it? I believe that they absolutely do. I think we have seen how they can manipulate. We know that we are master sinners, all of us, and we know how to command attention and get what we want. And so what we would do, I would say, and two of our kids, more than one in particular, the flaring up and the like losing it. I mean, like you would think I was hurting them to the point where they could not survive, throwing their bodies. And one time, one of our children, as they were throwing their body, I let them, because I was holding them, and I let go, and they fell over and almost hit the wall. And they came, as they were bawling, and they came to and kind of wide-eyed looking at me. And I said, so all that doesn't need to take place, does it? No, Daddy. And so I literally, sometimes I would allow them to go through the intensity of whatever, and then kind of gently grab them and say, that is not necessary, and you will not control this situation. You did something wrong, and Daddy's disciplining you because he loves you. And sometimes it didn't happen so smoothly, and it didn't happen, the stopping of the tantrum didn't take place so easily. And we had one in particular that it was very difficult to stop that. But every time it would happen, we had to hold them, and kind of bring them in and constrain them and say, you will not take over and do this. And so, and it was hard. It was not easy. It was very difficult. And a lot of times it was a big struggle for Jacqueline. I'd be at church or at work, and she'd call me and say, I can't get this, the child's name to stop and throwing tantrums and blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, did you spank them? No. Well, try that and see. And, and so she'd try it. And a lot of times it would work. She would say, man, they stopped. And, but then they would try to throw a tantrum at the same time. Okay, have you tried this? And so this was always looking them in the eye, kind of grabbing their body and saying, you know why you're getting a spanking? Yes, you were this. And what's interesting is you would always see the emotions up here, but when you ask the questions, they can calm down enough to answer the questions,
absolutely.
Which tells you they can regulate, they can self-regulate and control themselves. So it may sound cruel to say, are you serious? You're telling a 3-year-old basically to get it together? I am. Yeah. I am telling you that because they have the ability to self-regulate and to cry quietly. They do. Let me see what.
Can I just answer that as
absolutely.
Because I'm not sure if they were here last week, but to Morgan and Cara. So I had explained last week that we realized, and we do speak to our children, I mean, not now, when they would be crying uncontrollably. And as Derwin said, we just pull them to us, we start to speak to them, and they will literally calm down enough to hear what you're saying. And that's exactly what Derwin's saying too. They have enough self-control to bring it down, to listen to what you're saying. And if you just continue, if they're screaming, you just continue saying whatever you want to say to them at the calm voice, and they will come down. They will calm down enough to listen to what you're saying. They will. And there was another, the other thing I was going to say is, whatever you choose to do, because we're not trying to tell everyone spanking is the answer. You know, this is what the Bible teaches, and so this is right for you. And I said this last week, everyone has to choose what's best for your own family, because our children are different. So we can't deal with them. Even in our 4, the spankings did not go the same way for every single child. What I think it does come down to is whatever you choose, stick with it. Be consistent. Don't flip flop like, oh, I'm going to spank them today, but then, you know, next week I'm going to just decide to do this. Or just, I know there's a point in trying to figure out what tool actually works for your child, but whatever you choose, stick with it.
Yes. Yeah, that's excellent. Loretta said, but I struggle with believing that an object needs to be used on a toddler, not by default. I really think a firm tap with a hand can do it if the child isn't wild. Would you think that that's too lenient? I don't think that's too lenient.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect. And as Jacqueline said, you know, when we were talking about the intellectual development, they were all different. Disciplining them was all different. There was a point where with our son, I realized, yeah, spanking is not doing anything. And then with one of our children, she was so deathly afraid of spanking that it was a good tool to, you know, basically, if you don't want to get spanked, which is what we do for discipline, then don't be disrespectful, or don't be what was the other 2? Disrespect or disobedience, you know. And disobedience could be you lied, you told a lie. That's disobey because we've asked you not to lie. So yeah, so for us, it absolutely, there were times where it was literally, especially when they were really, really young, like I'm talking 2 years old, a pat on the hand was sufficient, you know, because whatever we did, it was to try and like almost get their attention to where they look at you like, wait, what just happened? I didn't expect that. And Chan says, the cry quietly has absolutely been working for us. When our missionary friend, Mr. Bill, told us about this, I said to myself and to Jacqueline, I said, this is cruel. You can't spank a 6-month-old that loses it when you're trying to change her diaper because, you know, somebody rings the doorbell and you walk away. And I said, that's cruel. You don't do that. But then I realized why he was saying that at 6 years old, they're starting to learn how to control things. And so I'm like, oh, wow. So you mean I can help myself and help this child learn how to not do this by being consistent and by also being firm with what I'm asking them to do or not do, and setting a pattern for them that you're not in control. Things don't always go your way and you have to be patient. And can they learn that at 6 months old? They can start to. Can they fully get it? Maybe not, but they can start to, you know? So here we go. Chances we have a 3.5 and a 1.5-year-old, Lord bless you by itself for that. Yes, we understand. And that I don't have my glasses and I'm struggling. That have both calmed down. We have said it. Yes. So when you say it, yes, they calm down and it works. I felt cruel with it, but it really does work. Okay.
Yes. Consistency is the hard part of parenting. It really, really is. Yes. It really is.
Yes. Just like dieting, America. Yes.
And it's hard because you get so exhausted. I mean, I think that's the one thing about consistency is it's exhausting, but it's one of those things that I feel like constant perseverance, constant going after whatever goal you've set for your home, chasing it down. You have to be consistent with it.
Yep, absolutely.
If you want to reach the goal.
That's right. Okay, so Chan says, I heard someone say spanking could be for disobeying, danger, defiance. Oh, I like all this. I've never heard this. Disobeying, danger, defiance, and destruction, and a newborn. Okay. Wait, I heard someone say spanking could be for I think there was something different. Okay. So for disobeying, danger, defiance, and destruction. Okay. Sorry, I have a newborn as well. Okay, I was like, wait, I'm a little confused. Yeah. Help me out. Okay. Loretta says, my husband is 6'2", and our daughter is tiny compared to him. So I think what you're asking about is how do we make sure that things don't get out of hand when a man is so much bigger than a little child? Is that what you're saying, Loretta? Because I don't know, and I want to make sure that I'm addressing what you want me to address there. All right, we'll get back to that, Loretta, but yes. So Paul and, hold on, wait, they're all flying in now. Hold on. Loretta says, wouldn't hit her, but I think she's figured it out. How can he discipline her without hitting her?
Get down on the level.
Yeah, get down on, yeah, go ahead and talk to that, babe.
No, I was just going to say, definitely getting down on her level, being, eye level with her, speaking calm, but just ensuring the fact that she knows that he's in authority, and clearly explaining and not explaining in a wordy way, but just letting her know that he is in authority and what the expectation is. I think that's a good start.
Yeah.
If you don't want to bring in anything physical.
It's good. Do you only discipline your children for things that you have already previously told them not to do or to do? What if they do something that you haven't already told them not to do yet?
It doesn't work.
Can
I say something?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, I would just say on that one, just like the Lord gives us chances, and we wouldn't be. I don't believe we'd be disciplined for something that we don't realize is wrong. And so when our children have done things that they were unaware of what the expectation was that we had in regard to something, that was just an opportunity for good conversation, an opportunity to address something new. But then obviously, if they, didn't, hold up, if they didn't do what they were supposed to do, then we addressed it the way that we normally address it. But we are very much into our children understanding and being clear on what expectations are. Yes. Because then they have no excuse for their sin.
That's good. That's very good. Let me see. Loretta said he wouldn't hit her, but I think, okay, so we've done that one already. Yeah, and I would say also with that, Loretta, what happened is there's a pattern that that has been set, and she's learned that, okay, so if I do this, Daddy won't do this, then that means I can get away with it. And the unfortunate thing for us as parents is our kids will follow suit with what we do, and sometimes when we don't do certain things, but we want certain behaviors, we have to now go and undo.
Yeah.
And it's hard, and we've had to undo many a time.
Yeah. And I'll tell you why. Yeah. Because of this next question of, have y'all ever stated you will show them grace instead of discipline? I am the queen of grace. So that's where we've had to undo. Derwin has we have set the boundaries. Yes. And then I have shown much grace and then have undone what we have put in place. And then we have to come back and redo. And I'm telling you, it sucks to come back and have to reinstate something you've already done, and especially if you've done it for a while. It's not worth it, y'all. Nope. I'm telling you, it's not worth it. Nope. But no, I do show a lot of grace, and there are many times that my children have done things that we've said not to do. And after talking to them, and especially if I see real remorse, and remorse not in the sense of, oh my gosh, I do not want to get this spanking, but remorse in the sense of, I really do recognize my sin right now, and I don't want to do it, or I need help. I don't want to do it, but I need help to not do it, then it's very, very easy to extend grace. Good.
It's very good. Let me get to this last one here. Communication and speech development, which we know that in this age from birth to 11, they're learning how to communicate properly. I would say something too that we need to make sure that we're figuring out is knowing at each stage in this each sub-stage or stop point in the commanding stage, and your doctor will tell you what markers you need to be looking for. So, from 1-year-old to 3-year-old, what am I looking for in regards to development and tactile development and walking and all these things? No, when the doctor says they're a little behind in this, okay, sometimes boys are behind in certain things at certain stages and girls are. And, if you have older siblings and you might be ahead because of certain things, know those things, but be very mindful that they're looking at the norm and your child may just not be the norm. And they may be delayed for a year or two and then catch up and pass everyone. Here's something that is a good marker for homeschool parents to understand so that we don't shame ourselves in what we're doing with our children. So there are basically 3 stages of homeschooling. And it's elementary, middle school, and high school. But what happens is in the elementary ages, homeschool kids test, way behind their public school, what's the word I'm looking for?
Your peers.
Peers, thank you. They're way behind. And I'll explain why in a little bit. Then by middle school, they're pretty much on par. And then by high school, they typically score higher than the public school kids. And you may say, well, why is that? Well, homeschool kids aren't trained to take tests. So you don't teach them towards a test. So when they take the same standardized test that the public school kids take, they're like, I've never done anything like this before. I don't even know what to do. So as a parent, I know that. So when my 3rd grader struggles on their standardized tests, I can say, okay, wait, they're still in elementary school. The stats tell me that by middle school, they'll be on par. And then by high school, they'll probably be above. And so you, as parents, we want to become experts at what goes on with my child at this age, so that we can catch if there is a true psychological or developmental delay, we can catch that. And there are all kinds of things to help remediate and help to bring that child up to par. But we need to know what's going on and what's supposed to, quote unquote, be going on in the norm to know what to do with that. Okay. So here are these stages right here of all within the commanding stage. So you have year 1 is typically or birth to year 1 is called infancy. Then 1 year to 3 years old, you know this. I don't have to really go into this, but at each of these stop points in the commanding stage, very specific things are going on. So what I'm going to do tonight, after we look at this next slide on cognitive development that we looked at last week, and we see here that we have some, and look at all that's taking place now. The first 3 of these stages, this is just talking about cognitive development, are all taking place within the commanding stage. That's why I wanted to include this. That blew my mind when I was studying and looking at all of this. All 3 of those. So literally sensory motory stage, the pre-operational and the concrete operation, all that's taking place from birth to 11 years old, about 11. And I said to myself, wow, that's why it's so difficult trying to figure children out, because the landscape is constantly changing. The landscape of who our children are, especially at this age, this commanding stage from birth to 11, is constantly changing. So what do we do as parents? What does that equal to? It equals to this. Okay? That is the word for us as parents. Be flexible. Be okay with tonight. The plan that I had, there's no way it's going to work. It's okay. Life is going to go on. I need to be flexible. And if we can get to a point where we're okay with some of these things, I think we would really see the grace of God in our parenting. I mean, God gave us the children. He gave us the temperament He gave us. You've got one that's a little more laid back as far as just my person goes, my personality, not my parenting per se. And then you've got one that's a little tighter. But how does that flesh out in our parenting? I think it's the complete opposite. So I'm a little more laid back. My parenting is a little firmer, where Jacqueline is a little more laid back with her parenting, but her personality is not that. So it's interesting how that fleshes out, but we know that, so we know what to do and what not to do as we're parenting, and lean on each other's strengths and help each other in our weaknesses. Now, the danger in all of that is our kids know it as well. Yep. And they can play good cop against bad cop. And they do. So be mindful of that. That is That is not fun. Even at the commanding stage, they'll learn how to do that. So Loretta said, no, let me go back. Chan said, let me make sure I'm hitting this. Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, they do pit us against each other, but then we've definitely gotten to a place where sometimes our kids, because we do allow our children to share their feelings and however they're feeling.
Especially more so now since we've been part of Blueprint and heard a lot of the Chip Dodd stuff.
And even, however it needs to come out if they're angry. But there are times when I'll say, don't speak to my husband that way. Or he'll be like, don't speak to my wife that way. Yeah. So that in itself also just
tells them that we're in this together.
That we are,
yeah. You ain't busting this up with your foolishness. Yeah. So Loretta said, I think my husband needs some sort of item to use because he doesn't want to use his hand on her. And I think it's a good thing. I'm the opposite. What sort of item would you recommend? It's only in the last few, why am I struggling with this? The last few days that she's really started pushing it with him. But we need to rein this before it gets wild. I know he wouldn't struggle like this with our son, though. FYI, she's just under 3. I think you need one of these. I mean, honestly, it delivers what I would call the heat. It delivers the hot. And you may say, man, you're serious about this spanking. I was, because I knew when the Bible says foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child, what does that mean? It means foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And one of the ways that the foolishness comes out is with the rod of correction. And so there's no question why a 3-year-old acts like a 3-year-old, but the 3-year-old can't act like a 3-year-old when the 2-year-old's 5. And so you have to help to drive out the foolishness. And how you drive out the foolishness is obeying the word of God and using the rod of correction, praying over them, putting them in an environment where they can learn and see other children behaving, which all of those things will help to rein in. But I would suggest getting some type of tool that will help with the spanking. So what I want to do now is Shiloh and Sheridan are our 2 youngest. They are both in the commanding stage. Shiloh is about to bounce out of there. She is 12 years old, and Sheridan will be 9 next month. And so I want them to just come and sit with us. Come on. And to just field any questions that you may have specifically, come on, to our children, to them, to the girls. So you want to grab a chair? You can come sit next to Mama. And Shiloh, you grab Sebastian's chair over there and come sit down. So this is Sheridan. Say hello.
Hi.
She is 8. And what grade did you just finish?
I just finished 3rd grade.
3rd grade. And so this behind her coming in as well is Shiloh. And Shiloh, come on up. Come closer. And Shiloh, no, you got to put it away so they can see us all. So Shiloh, tell them what grade you just finished and a little bit about you.
I just finished 6th grade. I'm going into 7th.
And what else? What do you like to do?
Do nails.
You like to do nails, and you like to bake
Cookies.
Sheridan, what do you like to do?
I like to play games with my siblings, and I like to
You like to do TikTok dances?
Yes.
Yes. And you guys like to make videos together?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys that are watching the class, feel free to put any questions in for Shiloh and Sheridan. Again, Sheridan is 8, soon to be 9, and Shiloh is 12. So I do have a question for you. What is the hardest thing when you think about how mommy and daddy parent you and how we deal with you? What is something that is very hard for you to deal with that you just like, I wish that they would not do this, in how we parent you?
Probably not getting so mad at me when I do something.
So we get mad at you. And what is that? So in the getting mad at you, what do we do when we get mad at you?
You yell at me.
Oh, really? Who yells at you?
Leilani said hi.
Oh, hi.
Who yells at you? And what is a yell? Because I don't think a lot of yelling takes place in this house.
Speaking loud.
Speaking loudly. So this is interesting because I think I would say, and Jacqueline would say, we don't yell at our children, but Sheridan is equating the speaking loudly with yelling. So from her perspective, it's yelling, but it's speaking in a firm, very direct voice. And so sometimes I think as parents, we may not even realize how we're coming across to our kids, but we also sometimes don't realize that they see things differently than they potentially really are. So that's good. Okay. What about you, Charlotte? What's something that goes on and you're just like, I wish in our parenting style that I wish they wouldn't do that?
Sometimes when one of us is like, if one of us is like in trouble or fighting with someone, we all have to suffer the consequences. Or if one of us wasn't doing something, we both have to suffer the consequences.
So literally, one does it, everybody pays for it.
Yep.
So, and that's, and one of the things that we try to tell our kids, and I think you just heard it, because sometimes it's hard to discern as a parent who was to blame. And so trying to teach them, and sometimes I don't think it's the best approach to be responsible collectively, one for another, but sometimes they all get in trouble, and the trouble may be, you're not off of electronics today, everybody's off. And so, but what is interesting, and even in those times where they're fuming mad, and maybe they know who did it, and so they're mad at that one person, what I've noticed is in those days where there's no electronics, yesterday was one of those days. There literally nobody was allowed to be on my phone or Jacqueline's phone or anybody's iPad or their own computers unless they were doing math, because they do math through the summer, or watching TV, which that is a lot. For a whole day in our house with our children, no electronics, that's a lot. But what I noticed was, what happened yesterday? What took place yesterday? You played games. What else? Was it? They literally, this is crazy. All of them had like a, what would you call it?
It was,
a camp out?
Yeah,
but it was
In-
very hot in there.
In my son's closet. So they all literally slept in his closet.
with the dog.
With the dog. Closet is not that big, y'all. But taking the electronics away, and it wasn't a punishment, it was y'all's minds need a break. Literally brought them together, which is interesting.
But and a lot of the collective discipline that takes place when they say, when somebody does something, but everybody gets in trouble, they didn't explain that the person that gets blamed is Casper. And since we can't discipline Casper, somebody here is going to have to be the fall guy. And so since no one knows who did it and Casper's not raising his hand, then they are going to have to be the example for Casper. So that's kind of what that's kind of what takes place.
True. Chan said, do you allow your older kids at their age to appeal a discipline and explain themselves? Yes. So we allow them, especially my son. He gets very frustrated because sometimes I operate, unfortunately, with not listening properly. And so he'll say, but Dad, you didn't listen. And so this is what took place. Oh, I'm sorry, son. So yes, we do allow them to appeal. If they feel like something was unjust or whatever, we do allow them to appeal. So yes, and I think it's a good thing because it's teaching them. There are times where you have to speak up for yourself and not wait for somebody to come to your, legitimately come to your rescue. You advocate for what you know you did or didn't do. Yep. And so yes, we do allow that. Absolutely. Yep. Jennifer said, what are the best things? This is a question for you girls. What are the best things your parents do that helps you feel closer to them?
Can I go?
Yeah.
Okay. One thing is they try very hard to spend time with us.
How do we do that? What do we do? Because I feel like a failure in that. I really do. I feel like I fail you guys with that. So what do we do? Or maybe it's going to be all mommy, then I'll really feel like a failure. What do we do that encourages you to say that we spend time with you?
You guys watch movies with us.
Okay.
We play games sometimes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's really
okay.
Sunday,
so
Monday.
Playing games, watch
Sunday,
movies.
Monday, but you don't ever come.
So Sunday, Monday, I started this thing with them where either on Sunday or Monday, we literally, they don't know what we're going to get. So it may be we're running to McDonald's to get, although our McDonald's doesn't have ice cream anymore, we're running to Zaxby's to get something, or I'll bring ice cream home, or, just something out of the ordinary that is just for them, So Sheridan, what would you say?
I would say that whenever I like look sad, both of you guys let me express my feelings without cutting me off. You let me finish talking, and you don't like deliberately just cut me off. You let me finish talking.
Okay, so thank you. I'm glad because it's important for both of you to be able to openly share how you're feeling and what's going on. So I'm glad that you feel like you can openly share. It's awesome. All right, so what more questions do you have for the ladies? Okay, I asked that, Jennifer says, I asked that because it's hard for us with 4 kiddos, trying to be more intentional with quality time. Yes, and I would say do not shame yourself on that. And it really is hard to try and figure out, especially when you have so many young ones. Oh my. And so sometimes the quality time, and I think we've lost the art of realizing quality time can be 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be 5 hours every week. You know, it literally can be, we're going to be intentional as a family to go on a walk, and tonight daddy's going to hold Sheridan's hand, you know? And so we go for a walk, and the quality time could be a squeeze of the hand. We used to do this thing where when we were somewhere and we were holding hands, and I would squeeze 3 times and I love you, you know? And so it was just, and I remember them looking over at me with these big eyes and just be so excited that daddy just squeezed my hand 3 times. But it literally showed them that I care. And I when we pray, we would sometimes pass that around. So another thing that we would do, and I did not like doing this, and I still don't like doing this, but every once in a while we would do it, is they would want to, and this is so funny when you have multiples, you'll see this, although they're like, I want my own room, I want this. A lot of times they are all asleep, they all go to sleep in the family room on the couches and on the floor. And so, or they'll be like, you know, can we all just be together tonight? And so, okay, what do you mean when you say that? Can we all just sleep in your room? So all 4, they'll bring their twin beds in and they sleep on the floor in our room. And I'm like, I hate this because it's so hot in here. But then I wake up and I look around and I'm like, this is awesome. This is awesome. Now, how often does that happen? That might be twice a year, 3 times a year. But it's just cool.
They ask more than
We
that.
They do. Oh, they do ask more than that.
But
Yes.
we sleep together a lot.
Yes.
Yeah,
So yes, and they will just upon themselves like, hey, let's go sleep in Simone's room or let's do whatever, you know. So they do that a lot. Do y'all allow? Somebody says, do y'all do dates with individual kids? When they were a lot younger, I used to do more of that. But what it looks like now is I will intentionally, because I'm the one that does a lot of the running around. So if we need something, I'll go pick it up. Even before COVID, grocery shopping, I'm the one that does all that. So I will, and when I realize I have not spent any time with Sebastian over the last 2 weeks. Hey, son, you want to come with me to the store? I have to run up to the church. Hey, you want to come with me? So I will literally seek out a child to go. And Jacqueline will do the same thing. Hey, I'm running to get some weave or whatever the case may be. I mean, it is what it is. And so who wants to, you know, and she'll pick a child to go with her. So, and, you know, and I've taken kids out on like to dinner, you know, so let's say we're waiting. Simone and I did this. We're waiting on Sebastian because he went to house church with our school. And so I just felt like I needed to spend some very specific time with her. And I think that's the thing, the key to this is learning your children and knowing what they need. Not what you, not what maybe sound equitable or fair, but what do they need?
Yeah.
There are children that all they need is for you to squeeze them every day and tell them that you love them. Okay. But there are children that every once in a while, they need you to look across them on the table, eating with them and bless them with something. And they're like, gosh, my dad did this for me. He really must love me, you know? And so, because there's quality time, there's physical touch, there's words of affirmation, there's gifts. And what's the last one? Words, affirmation, quality time, physical touch. No, I said physical touch. Help me, somebody. Physical touch, words of affirmation, quality time, gifts, and acts of service. Acts of service. So I know one of my children that their love language is acts of service. I know that for sure. There's always a you, Al, who, it's her. She's always wanting to do something for somebody, whether it be paint somebody's nails. She cut the grass. She wants to do an act of service. Yes, she does cut the grass. You heard that correctly. She wants to do something for somebody. But then another one just wants you to give them a hug. I have one that I don't think they realize that is their that is theirs, but it's always a hug. Always. That's Simone. Simone is always a hug. Always.
What?
And so Sebastian's is words of affirmation, I believe. He lights up when you, and so knowing what the children, what about you? Shopkins or doing something like that. So yes, that is yours. So, and when you know what your child's love language is, then you do your best to meet them where they are. You know, my love language is, what's mine?
Physical touch.
Physical touch, and you
Words
told
of
me
affirmation.
words of affirmation. I did not want to believe that it was words of affirmation, but I've realized it is. And the most important words of affirmation that I need are from my wife. It's not from other people, but it's from her. So if I'm not getting that, I feel a void. And so she knows that. So she fills my
I tell him
tank.
how handsome and strong he is.
All right.
They
so
didn't say
yes.
it has to be true. He just wants words of affirmation.
Wow.
I'm just
wow.
kidding. I think you're smart.
So somebody said, Chan says, that's so good. I've never thought to do the 5 love languages and with my kids. It makes sense now, man. I cannot see. It makes complete sense. And what I realize is this. So I teach at the Homeschool Academy, and I teach most of the high school sciences this past year. Next year, it's going to be the high school math classes. And so we got to talking in one of my classes, and this was with all high schoolers, small classes, like 5 to 10 kids, about the love languages. And so I said to them, I said, what do you think my love language is? And all of my students knew my love language. You know why? Because I express myself with my love languages. I tell them how good they are. I tell them how, whatever the case may be. So, and they knew that mine was physical touch as well, because I literally, when I meet people, first time I've met them, I'll touch them on the shoulder. And so they knew that about me. And so they engage with me the same way. So I'll see them, Mr. Anderson, they'll pop me, or they'll say, man, Mr. Anderson, thank you for this. And because they're understanding that is who Mr. Anderson is. So let's be a part of engaging that way. Mm-hmm. And so the interesting thing is, I think it's the same with our children. We've recognized, and you may think, was that set up? We've never talked about what their love languages are. So it was interesting that when I was talking about our child, that it's physical touch, Jacqueline knew who I was talking about. And it was Simone that I was thinking of, because it's evident in how she relates that physical touch is her love language. It's evident. It's evident in how Sheridan relates that her love language is quality time. Shallow's is acts of service. Sebastian's is words of affirmation. And so allowing that to guide how we spend time with our children can prove to be so valuable in encouraging them.
And it really is about learning your child, because it's very easy to express your personal love language on your children or even other people.
That's good.
But sometimes, like Derwin, and I'm saying this from experience, when we first got married, he would kill me with words of affirmation, kill me with physical touch, and those are not my love languages. So it caused just not a frustration, but just, I guess that he wasn't meeting my needs, because those weren't my needs. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, that's really nice, but.
And so the same type of thing, I mean, exact same. Jacqueline would get me little things, and I'd be like, oh, okay, thanks. But the intention was so pure, but I don't want things. I want you to just touch me, or I want you to, and it's not, I'm not talking about Shiloh. I'm not talking about in a sexual way. I'm talking about just rub
it
my
really
shoulder.
Is sincerely
It literally is. Now, it ain't always.
Stop
just,
it.
All right.
Yeah,
Anyway, so, but literally just, you know, touch me so that I know that you care and you're present. And then, or tell me something, man, you did a great job, or, you know, and you may say, so is it my job to pump you up in that way? Yes. It's our job as parents to meet our children where they are. And where they are is God made them with these feelings and emotions and made them with these needs and wants and desires. And so what I can do is encourage that. I remember, and I will never forget it, and I've apologized to him a couple times to where he's like, you don't have to do that anymore, Dad. It's good. We're good. This was probably about 2 years ago because we were living here, and Sebastian did something, and I kind of walked away from him, and I said, so stupid, you know? And I wasn't calling him stupid, but I was saying what he did was stupid, right? He was in the kitchen. I will never forget. And so about 5 minutes later, I walk over, I went back in the kitchen, and he was standing at the kitchen sink and he was crying. And I was like, oh my, okay, I get it. And so he said it hurt him because he said, I've never called him stupid before. And so I told him, I said, I wasn't calling you stupid. I was saying what you did was stupid, but it didn't matter because he took it in as that. And so I had to make it right and apologize and tell him, I don't think you're stupid, you know. But what I realized in that too is what I say to him means a lot. Now, would that mean the same for another child? It probably wouldn't, because that's words of affirmations, not for them. So even at that commanding stage where they are at their age, I can learn what makes them tick and what makes them come alive. And then I can follow suit. Sheridan loves, Dad, will you come ride bikes with me? Dad, will you do this with me? Dad, will you do that with me? Dad, will you spend time with me? Will you see that I'm here? Okay, I will. You know, and so, and I do it because I love her and I value her. I value our relationship, so I do it. Shiloh's is she wants to serve. But with that, I think it's important to realize that we can serve her as well. And so how can we serve her? You know, she loves to bake cookies and serve people with that. Well, maybe I come home with all the stuff that she needs to bake cookies and don't even tell her and watch her come alive. Dad, you got me stuff to bake cookies. I didn't even know you were going to do that. Okay, well, here you go. And she, Dad, thank you. Hug me. I'm not doing that to get brownie points and to get cookies made. I'm doing that because I want to serve my child and I want her to come alive and how God's made her. And so it's the same for all. Now, is there failure? Yeah. Lots and lots and lots. More failure than probably success, because you get so focused on what you're doing and your own needs that you forget you live with 5 other people and we're all different and we all have different needs, you know? And so, and just so you know, Jacqueline's is quality time. That's her love language. One of the major ones for her is quality time. So we're dealing with, we have 2 in the house that are quality time and 2 that are words of affirmation, 1 act of service, and Simone's is physical touch. So that's interesting. So knowing how Simone's always coming up to me and giving me hugs, always. She doesn't do that with anybody else but me. And I've noticed that.
Yeah.
Why? Because maybe she realizes this is Daddy's love. Without us even talking about it, she knows I like hugs, she likes hugs, and so she comes and hugs me all the time. So what do you do all the time? You're always trying to serve.
Yeah.
And, you know, even she cut the grass last week. She's like, Dad, can I cut the grass? No. Okay, Shiloh, go ahead, go cut the grass. You know? And so understanding all of that and helping to develop what God has put in there for me and for Jacqueline is so key at every stage, but at this commanding stage, because when next week we'll go on to the next stage, to that literally, the coaching stage. That's 12 to 17. And so next week, Sebastian and Simone will be part of our discussion, and we'll talk to them about some things that we do as parents and some things that work and some things that don't work, because we have not arrived and we are not perfect and we mess up a lot. So cool. Y'all have any more questions for the girls, or do y'all have anything you want to add? Whoopsie. Whoops. Anything? Okay, they're fine. Well, if you guys don't have anything, I think we are finished for tonight. Look at that, 8:10. So I'm excited. I'm glad that you guys you came back, and I'm glad we added. I know we added the Knicks, and so excited. And I think we add. Oh, there's the Hills are here, and Chris Duncan, the Whites. Cool. So yes. So love you guys. Thank you for joining, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys. Yeah.
Bye bye. Did somebody just post something? I said
Yeah,
thank
thank
you.
you.